how people die. Because it's wild. There are different colors, right? An asphyxiated person's blue and red. You know, it's wild to see how many different colors they are. And any kind of internal poisoning, they're green. And a lot of the dialogue that sort of came about then was sort of Jeff and I improvising about like malpractice or whatever. Because you can tell, you can tell how somebody died by how they look. They are remarkably statuesque. It's so bizarre. To me, they weren't intimidating at all, except there's a kind of a faint medical smell about them that is really, you know.
Here's the other thing that reminded me too, Bruce, is you remember when Bruce first takes the body down to the morgue, what does Bruce do? He takes a deep breath, he does not breathe in the morgue, and then when he gets out, because I'm sure that came out of our experience.
Yeah.
Of going down into the morgue. It's just it's a death smell that you just do not want to live with. and I don't know if you would have done that necessarily if we hadn't taken that little field trip.
No, I wouldn't have thought about it. But there is something you've never smelled before, and it's not a rotten smell, but it's dang close.
Well, that really helped my lunch.
Yeah.
May we have another and will Bruce come back?
If we have another, Bruce has got to come back.
Yes.
I propose that the next one should be called Dan's Revenge.
Yeah. We thought about
For what?
this
I don't
now.
know. Really.
Right. You know Dan's gone to hell in a handbasket after all this business. Herbert, no, over and over. Killed his girlfriend. Total alcoholic, I'm sure. His life is completely ruined. And I'm sure he's had years to have this information fester.
And as you know, still no gratitude.
I think the reason that Re-Animator stood up so well is that there's just certain movies that are milestone films in a certain way, and I think Re-Animator was the first movie that successfully, other people have tried to do it, that combined that intense horror and that humor together so well and started a trend of other people imitating and doing the same thing. But did you have any feeling when you were doing that the humor and the horror were meshing?
I know that Stuart took it very, very seriously. There was no humor in this movie, and I've had conversations over the years with Stuart because, you know, Re-Animator is not a comedy. Well, here's the trick on that, is that because he took that point of view, we did not get cute, okay? At one point, Bruce and I, before filming, we kind of went, okay, the only way we're going to get through this is if we find humor for ourselves. I mean, it's not something that we're going to go, that aren't be funny, but there is macabre humor in these very hideous situations. And we have to release this tension, this awful, awful gruesomeness. We have to find an escape valve for that to keep them all in the air. So we made a pact between ourselves, Bruce and I, that we would do that, and yet at the same time maintain a deadly seriousness that Stuart demanded. So that tension, I think, was successful.
You know what? A head giving head is one of the worst puns ever.
Well, you know, it's interesting you bring that up and that Jeffrey brings it up because creatively, this was the only battle I had with Stuart and Brian once the film was finished. I looked at the film, and it's still at that point, Stuart was thinking this should be a deadly serious, horrific, horror, scary film. And for about 5 weeks, I slowly convinced them that if the music did not take a tack to treat it, not funny, but twisted and quirky, if it didn't take that tack, people would walk out of the audience just either bored or disgusted or something, but it had to reflect not humor in a funny way, but that quirkiness that makes Re-Animator what it is. And basically I kind of won that argument, and you're right, it's the film that changed the genre in a way that then allowed a type of quirkiness and humor to come into the genre, and with a variety of these, and I just happen to have done it through music for that film.
How would you guys classify Re-Animator? Do you look at it as more of a zombie movie, a Frankenstein's monster kind of thing, or just totally on its own?
I think the best for me is I see it, if you replace the head-giving head scene with Snidely Whiplash tying Belle to the railroad tracks, it's melodrama. It's real, you know, I mean, there's a reason why they put references to Re-Animator in American Beauty. They were not random. It's because the themes are very similar, of an older man leching after a younger woman, and that's why they you know, I mean, I was so amazed that we had become so iconic that we were a frame of reference for, you know, audience members that were seeing you know, an Oscar-winning movie. It just felt like, you know, how about that? How would you pay us? But it is, I think, at its essence, it has elements of horror and grotesquerie and grand guignol, which is a famous, you know, French sort of theater style where you just shock with a lot of blood and unexpected hideousness, but ultimately it's a universal story of life and death and love. Everybody forgets that the original script was much more of a love story. There were a lot of scenes between Meg and Dan. What are we going to do? How are we going to survive this? We've got to bear it down, unfortunately. I'd love to see some of those scenes again, but really, that, you know, and yet in the middle of it, it has a heart. I mean, you care for him at the end when his love is dead, and his only option is to go to the dark side and pull out that needle. I mean, what would you do? You'd do the same damn thing.
I know what I'd do.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun,
What is Stuart Gordon like? I know he has a big theater background, but really like as a person.
What is Stuart like? Stuart is a wonder, man. I mean, he's one of a kind. He really is a visionary, and we've worked a lot together. You've worked with him a lot. He can be an incredibly, I mean, first of all, he knows story and character really well. He's really, really strong on knowing the story that he wants to tell and setting up empathy for his characters so that they're not so two-dimensional. He can be incredibly stubborn. Incredibly stubborn, too. I remember one time I was shooting some movie with him, and he said, "Cut, Jeff, come here." And he handed me the script, and he said, "There's a the." Really? So we're going to do it again for a the. Okay. So
But you know what else? There's two sides to Stuart. I mean,
but he's a teddy bear.
yes, yeah.
Sweetheart.
Yeah, and you know, as a director in these movies, one thing all directors have in common is they really want to control their product, basically the final thing. And when it comes to the very last thing to be done in a movie, which in fact is the music, it's the one area where they kind of lose. They don't have the control. They can't do it, and this is where the teddy bear side of Stuart comes in, because he has to be able to trust that person implicitly. And I can say in every situation that I work with Stuart, and it's got to be, what, 17